mind didn't see the sign. Now you will.
Hey, Composing Gloves here, and this is a sound design with FM8. Yes, it's good to do one of these. So what is the deal here? What is the sound? It sounds friggin' crazy. Today is a rip sound. It sounds like this. Let me put it in context. Let me show you a rip bass in context. I ended up making an entire track. So I've been listening to a lot of jungle-y type stuff. There's a predecessor to D&B. So here it is. So it's a little repetitive. I'm going to go through and obviously vary it up and stuff, but I started focusing on other parts of the track once I had this sound down. The whole FLP started as that sound, and I just kept messing with it till I got something that I liked and enjoyed and could use further in a track. The track itself, you know, it's whatever. A lot of these loops are loops from other tracks that I've done that I just never finished, but I'll bounce them out, and what you'll do is you should render them so that they have slide speed, so you can drop them into any project tempo and it works. Like for example, I was like, I need a dope sub, which I also need to change the note at a couple spots in here, but like this was just from another track that I had done. This is from a sample pack because I own like a billion sample packs that I like keep buying sample packs, but then I only use like maybe 10% of what I get. And so I've been trying to be way more creative in the way I use my samples. That way I can get my money back as like far as usefulness, because they're so cool, but I end up making all my own stuff, but it's like, it's valuable to use other people's stuff. So I also use presets in here too, which is something I don't do as much as I probably could to take advantage of it. So like presets are cool beans. If you know all the synthesis techniques, presets just can just go to waste. So anyways, FM8. Let's talk about this. So it's this crazy sounding bass type thing, and I want to show you something that is kind of crazy when it comes to something like this. So the patch itself is cool, but it's not enough. Like I can't get sounds. FM8 is great as a source module, but I gotta go to post. There's just not enough in FM8 by itself for me to get a sound of this kind that I was really selling for myself. Like I was like, oh yeah, this is a great sound. So instead I decided to go into, just because of its distortion effects they weren't giving me enough precision in the way I wanted to have. And we're going to talk about processing. So anyways, there's all this processing going on, and so with the processing it sounds like this. Okay, there's a beat still, and this is still on. So it sounds like that, right? Without processing, with all this stuff off, it sounds friggin' stupid. So this is with all the processing on. So this is like a huge part of the sound. Now, of course, I'm like clipping the living crap out of it. My answer right now is I don't freaking care. I just want a sound that sounds cool. I haven't mixed it. As you can see, all the faders at nominal, zero mixing. I think it actually sounds pretty clear considering this scenario right here. I mean, I can only imagine what it's going to sound like after I mix it. So yes. Now let's talk about the sound itself. So I'm going to turn the post off for now, but you should be aware that the EQ, we'll talk about this when we get to it. Okay. So without it, that's what it sounds like. Okay, now how did I make that? This is a pretty simple thing to do actually in FM land. The effects, well, let's go to the operators first. So first you go to your operators, you go to F. F is a ratio of 1 coming out at 80%, at 80. 80% I guess is accurate too. So that's fine. It's a sine wave, nothing shocking there. Now E is a triangle wave modulating F at 12. If I get rid of, so there's two tones. There's E and B coming out. If I turn B off, you get this, which is the most of the sound. Most of the sound. If I turn F off, you get this. Yeah, it's just like this. It's like there's a gremlin under your porch talking to you via drum and bass. And the reason that B is super mega important though, because in post, the way the distortion happens and the EQ stages happen, F gets reduced, B gets pushed way up, and because B is so low, you get a lot of that clicky, sort of that rip sound I was going for, and then it speeds up depending on the note you're playing, and so it just sounds crazy, and we're modulating things. So okay, So that's B and F are sort of the sources coming out. E and D and C are all modulating F in the long run. C is a serial relationship, la la la. Go watch my Learn FM synthesis if you really want to know, the ideas going on here. Look up serial relationships, parallel relationships. There's videos in there about this stuff. So it's a ratio of 12, a ratio of 1, triangle wave. Now D is modulating B and F. D is a ratio 1. It's like not that big of a deal. But what is a big deal is I'm moving the lever. So in Citrus, you can't do this. Or slider. I guess a lever would be okay. We should call them levers, not sliders. Because if I wanted to be on stage, I want to do a freaking lever, not some stupid little slider. That'd be dope. That would be cool. Could you imagine someone up there mixing with levers? Oh, yeah. That needs to be a thing. A lever MIDI controller. If you make MIDI controllers out there, I'm telling you, I'd buy it. If it wasn't like ridiculously expensive. So, okay. In Citrus, you can't do this, but in FM8, you can modulate this thing right here. Oh no, you can do this in Citrus. This is something you can do in Citrus. What you can't do is you can't control specific spots, which I'm also taking advantage of. So you can do this in Citrus. But anyways, I'm moving this. So D is turning on and off with B and F if we play it. You see, there it goes. And then E is turning on and off like crazy too. And that's that specific spot. So that's and now in this particular configuration, you could make it happen in Citrus, but it's not nearly that simple. You kind of have to do a lot more thinking. Me, I just go browse parameters, move it, and then right click create automation clip, and that's how I get my automation clips. Browse parameters in here in case you've like never done third-party automation. Okay, so that is that. That's pretty much all that's going on here. C is a ratio of 1.5. This is a pretty important thing as far as timbre goes, and it is looking like that. That's what it's a square wave. Something else that's cool about FM8 is you can see the values that you're at. In Citrus, they're knobs, and they show you in the hint bar when you move them. But when you hover over them, I don't believe they show you. And this is just better. That way, if you want to like move it around, you can move it exactly back to where it was. It's just there's just a number of things that are just more functional here. Okay. So that's, sort of the story behind the patch. Now, after that, the only other place to really go is over here. And I used a shelving EQ to change the balance. You notice that it boosted the high end. If I boost the low end, you're going to get a really boomy sound. Like your high end will be substantially reduced because it's just taking up all the room in your mix. So I did not want to boost the low end anymore because I have stuff going in post for stuff like that. See that? Ooh, yeah. So, okay. So after you get it through there, I was like, cool. And I automated these things. And I knew that modulator E was going to be like the high end. So when this comes up, I know I'm going to get a lot more of the upper end of stuff because that's that higher frequency, that octave 12 ratio. Octave 12, the ratio of 12, that's where that is. By the way, you can move that around a lot and get a lot of different timbres out of it. And then the parametric EQ, this is not what I'm looking at. Here it is, D. So this is D. This is sort of the low type of stuff. So yeah, that's the accurate way to describe that kind of sound in case you were wondering. So if you describe it any other way, you're not talking about the correct sound. Just so you know, that's the way to do it. So I added in some EQ. This is it. So already I've like taken the low end up. I was going for the boomy because I wanted room in my upper end because it's drum and bass or jungle, and so yeah, it was working out. And I'm moving 4 around. This phaser thing makes a huge difference, like a way bigger difference than it should in the next stage. So let's talk about what's going on here. So it's important to note that I am, playing some notes. I'm modulating these, and then I'm also modulating the band pass. As you saw, 4 was like moving around in there. Not the band pass, the notch filter. So this guy right here, he's moving around. And what's important about this is it hits a compressor, and I'm using the supercharged GT, and I just turned it up. I'm not obeying any general rules. I'm all about the sound right now. Like whatever will give me the sound I want, that's what I'm gonna do. So the character, they have this cool character thing, which is, it's got some multi-band compression features that are kind of cool. When you get into plugin design and DSP, you can like make some really specific things that just don't exist intuitively otherwise. Like, sure, you could create a similar setup with other plugins and things, but it's just easier if you just have an automatic, preset type thing. never mind. I'm not talking about DSP. So we have saturation, which is cool. It's on mild. It's 3.8 in the compressor. If you don't have this compressor, don't worry about it. Just try and finagle something with some sort of a compressor. The EQ will change how the different frequencies hit the compressor. So that's a big deal. That changes timbre right there. You can see it brings up the high end, even though I took out a lot of it, but it brings it up a little bit differently than it otherwise would be brought up because of the whole compression deal. I have a video like what is compression, but I plan to do like a series on Maximus on some point because it's totally worth doing. And then after that, this is the big deal. Now, I use this all the time. It's in a lot of videos. I have a video on it on what the Waveshaper is and what it does in the FL12 effects series. So go check that out if you're really curious. Because this is where it gets crazy. So the EQ changes how it hits the compressor, but the EQ in reality is changing how it hits the distortion, which will give me a huge variety of timbres, distortion-wise. So this is basically controlling the upper end bite timbre, this first little notch thing. These are sort of mid notches. Now, something to note about when you do curves inside the Waveshaper. I've seen a lot of people who say we made this shape and that's how it did, but then they don't really like, eventually you do sort of get an idea of what things do. This, when you do things like this, especially if I were to make this curve a lot harder, you'd get a lot more, there'd be a swift volume change in frequency content. And if your content's moving around, you're going to get a lot more of this mid sort of crunchal type thing. Okay, I guess I could get some I like. This won't be too dramatic, but here it is right here. So yeah, distortion makes a huge deal. And that low stuff that was like tiny before is now enormous. And we've essentially created some sort of crazy square wave. And then if I were to, so that's it there. If I move this down, you hear how there's additional noise and stuff? So you can make moves like that, and it generally exists in this range. It depends on also the amplitude at which you're hitting the Waveshaper. But right now, I'm pretty much hitting it full, like over full blast. So I'm taking advantage of the entire Waveshaper. So yeah, so that's a little bit of insider stuff on the Waveshaper, I guess. I'm not using the delay. However, you could try using the delay. Turn off the feedback. The cutoff still makes a difference because I believe it affects the first delay still. I have a video on this, but it's a really simple plugin. It's just a delay. The idea is you want one delay, though, that you can control minutely. So this is at like, if you hold down control, you can get more fine control over it. As you see, it's a smoother than without it. It's too fast without it. And you generally want to be, I believe it's the Haas effect. You need to go look up the Haas effect. One day I'll have a critical listening series too. I have all these things I want to do, but the sound design ones are just like so much fun. With it on, check it out. So delay, this will offer you a wide variety of textures. Now I'm mixing it with the dry. Without it, it sounds is because it's going through the filter. So essentially what you can use this plugin to do is you can mix it dry, and then you can mix the input in to your liking, essentially a wet knob right here. And then the cutoff will determine at what point does the frequency start to sort of phase against, do the Haas effect. It's sort of like a phaser at this point. And yeah, so you could try different lengths of time. Move it to 3. So you see it makes a huge difference. I decided I didn't like it though, so I got rid of it. And now the other very important thing is that sounds pretty darn aggressive, but it can also take up a lot of room in my mix. And so I was like, it was kind of a good thing I was making a track with this. Gives me a little more practical use of the sound. And so I put a low pass filter on it. Now I like the Fruity Free filter. This is essentially like, if you've ever really thought about volume knobs, how they work, this is like a crazy volume knob. Basically, that's what filters are. They're like very, very specific volume knobs. Watch my filter. I have a video on filter basics if you're really curious. And it's got, my Q is up just a little bit. This is just a touch. So when it moves around, there's a slight resonance boost wherever my cutoff is. Here's my cutoff. Check this out. Yeah. Ooh, yeah. It's a low pass. I could change it. I could be like a high pass or something. But that's not like low. I wanted like low, gurgly, like driving. If you've ever heard of like neuro or liquid drum and bass, where it's like this crazy blah, 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 like driving force, I always picture like a giant fist punching through like the earth and just earth coming up everywhere. Yeah, if you look up that Noisia video of the plane like running into the ground, except for I picture a giant fist. Just look up like Noisia music video and it'll be up there. It's one of the more, it's for some reason that's near the top of the search engines, even though he has like a ton of other tracks. So that's the game, blah, 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 blah. It's like whatever. It's just a filter. The neat thing is the Q, and the other cool thing is it's a Fruity Free filter, but it's response time, because remember faders when they slide up, they'll slow down, they'll smooth out the end. This has a quicker response time. At least I think it does. I haven't seriously tested it. Now the other thing was, this is still pretty much a mono sound, and it was really killing the clarity that I was dealing with. And remember, I haven't done any side chaining or nothing. I was going hardcore, just put it on there, because in jungle a lot of things sort of just overlap. A lot of times the kick isn't super present. It's more like a big whoop, you know what I'm saying? It's like some sort of dog that's sitting behind you and barks, and you feel the bark while you're dancing. Like you're sitting there dancing. That's what I would do. That'd be like, ooh man, that would be aesthetics right there. So yes, but what I decided to do instead was I went stereo shaping effect on it. Now I'm just delaying it, so this could be bad for mono compatibility, and it sounds a lot bigger and aggressive over a real set of monitors, which is a good thing. Now wherever you are in the venue, you will get a different sound. It's kind of cool. So depending on where you stand, you'll get a different sound. And it sounds bigger and more aggressive and stuff. Over at headphones, not so much, because of the nature of headphones. It doesn't interact with the environment. So this is kind of a cool sound for that too. But if you turn it on, I'm automating it on and off. So, because when it gets down to mono, it sounds a lot more aggressive and punch, because everything lines up nicely, and then it spreads back out, and then it comes back in. And so that's what this is, stereo shaper mix level. It's just a delay. I generally don't, at least by nature, I know the presets pretty well. But sometimes I'll come in here and mess with it, but it's just a preset. If you go through, I'm not sure what preset I'm on. I'm sure I could find it. Oh, it doesn't tell me. I'm not sure what preset I'm on. It's the delay one though. It's in post too. So yes. So after that, that's pretty much it. That's the sound. So you can hear it. There's mono. It starts mono. It gets bigger. And so something cool. Now let's talk about sort of the style of writing I have here. So here, now this isn't a done drop, because I feel like it's a little repetitive, but you got to remember when you're writing a track that it sounds different when you're looking at it in like one section, and then when you look at it in context, it sounds really, really different, like just way different. So something that is repetitive could be very nice in contrast to something that was like crazy, which over here, I go like a little bit crazy. So, and at the beginning of an intro might not be the best move. Like I think it flows the track itself, but so it's a little more complicated decision. You can't just look at the drop and say, oh, that's repetitive, we got to change that. It's not always a good idea. You got to look at it as a whole thing. So I all the time end up going back to the beginning of the song just so I can hear the one change I just made like 2 minutes into my song. It lets me contemplate things too as I'm going, because if I feel unhappy with any part of my track as I'm listening to it, then I'm like, I gotta stop it. I gotta fix it right then. Like that's my standard. That's what I've decided. What's one of my standards that I try to do. Sometimes I ignore it, but it's always a bad idea when you ignore something that's bothering you. Just stop the song and fix it. Like don't settle. So I used to settle. Like there are tracks I've published and stuff that I regret publishing because I was settling. And so I'm trying not to settle now. So that was something, yeah. I just, when you're new, you get in this, like, you play this mind game with yourself. It's like, oh yeah, my control button doesn't, there we go. Okay. Dude, man, bro. Okay. Working? The keyboard's not working. There we go. I have like an old school keyboard right now. The receiver is like this big honking thing. All right, so again, style. So with the automation, I have like this short choppy thing, and the nature of the FM will cause it to change. So when I do things like this, it's like still being chopped. It's just getting creative with how you layer down your effects. So yeah, so there's the chop. You can make it unique, like, and make them different angles, be faster. This one, I didn't know what was going to happen. I'm not sure what the protocol is in FL when you stack two automations controlling the same thing, because this is the filter and this is the filter, and so it takes on this one, but I let it do whatever the heck it's doing. Like, I don't even know, because it sounds like it switches to this one, because it goes wah wah. But over here, I don't know if it takes the sum, if it sums them together. I don't know what it does, but I just left it there, just being creative. That's like part of the excitement of some of this stuff. Now, I've seen other people, other YouTubers do tutorials where they talk about just doing random things, being creative, but that's more, but almost without exception, everything I've seen that they simply don't know what they're doing. Like, that's different. They blame it on being spontaneous, where it's like, no, you should really go and research that. Like, you'd be a better producer if you did that. Here, I could. And like I simply don't know, but it's like that is such a small detail that I question if it's worth it. And I deduce, I feel there's some sort of I feel like there's a mix. Maybe there's not a mix. Maybe I'm tricking myself and it's actually the timbre change up here and it's sticking to the top one, because it certainly sounds like it is. But then I hear the wah wah at the end, so I don't know what the deal is. If any of you guys know, drop it. I'm not sure where to look that up. That's another, in my defense, I have no clue where to look that up. That's like crazy. I'd have to go on the FL forums and ask that question. So yeah, here it is one more time in context. And here's the, also by the way, that's part of this too, with whatever the last cutoff values I had, because it pops up over here. This is a resampled version of that sound. I simply sampled it and I put it at the beginning, but I'm not sure if I enjoy it anymore. I combined it with another sound to make it more interesting. These sounds over here are sounds from my own track, so I feel justified in using them. And then I paid for a lot of these other things. Like this is just some crazy. Yeah. Yes, I love this kind of stuff. If you have any questions about it, let me know. I know I kind of breezed through it, but it's honestly the patch is just getting creative with the sounds. Now you can see that this EQ right here could actually be a really dramatic effect because it's so early in the chain. I gotta be like careful what I'm doing. Subscribe and have a blessed day. Hey, Composing Gloves here, and today we are going to be talking about, you guessed it, we're going to be talking about compound intervals. So we talked about how C is the base, well, not C. We talked about how we can start at a note and go major, second, major, third, minor, third, la, 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 all the way up to the perfect eighth. And now you are very familiar with that concept and you've memorized these intervals.